In this video, we are talking all about Pandora Avatar coming to Disneyland. Where would it go? Would it go into DCA? We don't know. We're going to talk about it. Well, we do. Well, we do think we know, but we'll talk about it. And we're also going to talk about Imagineering, the whole Imagineering shakeup with Bruce Vaughn, much, much more with special guest Candid Camper up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. We are joined today by a very special guest, Mr. Candid Camper. First time on the show. Welcome, Candid. It's great having you, sir.
Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so as you see at the bottom there, the Candid Camper, you can find me on Twitter and you can find me on YouTube. YouTube videos will probably be posted a little bit more frequently, but I'm always on the Twitter board, so hit me up.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have you, sir. Thank you for joining us. And right over here, we got the producer, Dre, the Dr. Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on the channel. Dre, welcome back, sir. Welcome back.
Hey, happy to be back. This is, I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. One with, going over some things that we kind of touched on during the week, but we can actually go ahead and elaborate in more detail. And also parse out fact from fiction. I think it's going to be a really interesting one. But hey, if anybody wants to follow me, you can go do so right down there at VashGuy. Just go ahead, type that in. It should pop up for all the, as Christine Wissons McCarthy would say, with all the robust discussion right there. And if you guys want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55, where we have some amazing shows up there right now and more to come, including from my own Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
And we actually almost lost Ray before the show.
Yeah. Oh man. You know, these water bottles, they don't tell you. They don't tell you that they're definitely not safe 100% all the time. They can definitely get the best of you sometimes. So I do apologize about that, gentlemen. But I assure you, I won't be gagging on any water bottles anytime soon. Thank you.
It's good. It's good to see you, sir. And then over here we got Mr. Family Man 23 back from a little hiatus, but George, welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me back. Yeah, I was a bit under the weather, but I was still kind of following all the coverage of everything that you guys were putting up on social media. So I'm all rare and ready to go. But if you want to follow me, you could do so on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. If you want to interact with me, you could do so on Twitter at Disney George. You could also check out the new podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. And of course, you can find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
There we go. All right, let's talk business. Let's talk some Avatar coming to the Disneyland Resort. Dre, if you want to set the table for us, and we'll go from there.
Yes. So obviously we heard back during the, I believe, the Q1 fiscal year 2023 earnings call, February 8th with Bob Iger. He outright said, "Hey, a Avatar experience is coming to Disneyland," and people were excited, but let's say they were what do you want to say? Conservative with their predictions, let's say, right? People were saying, well, he said experience. He didn't say expansion, didn't say land, didn't say Pandora. So obviously this means it's going to be a meet and greet, something small. It's going to be, I wouldn't, bank on much. We even heard that Jungle Cruise is going to get redone into Avatar, all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, it turns out that the narrative has somewhat changed after that D23 article that we've highlighted multiple times here on the channel, talking about as amazing as Walt Disney World and how D23 was really hyping it up to be something that I think was a little bit more significant than maybe people had originally proposed, right? Now I understand, D23 isn't super definitive. I mean, it's merely a publication arm of the Walt Disney Company, but as people have pointed out, including people that are highly respected within our community, such as like Robert Niles from Theme Park Insider, their job is to hype things up. Okay, cool. Well, yesterday, actually, Bob Iger went in front of Morgan Stanley and elaborated on everything as it relates to Avatar at Disneyland. So, at least somewhat. But I wanted to go ahead and read you some of those comments because for some reason they went overlooked. And yet I do believe that they're pretty important to the conversation. So here we go. Can you read that, guys?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. On the over earnings front, I've always believed that Disney was a brand that needed to be accessible. And I think that in our zeal to grow profits, we may have been a little bit too aggressive about some of our pricing. That's a whole discussion, by the way, which we can also get into. But we'll keep it here. And I think there's a way to continue to grow that business, but be smarter about how we price so that we maintain that brand value of accessibility. And we made certain steps. We took certain steps when I came back to do just that. And they've resonated with extremely well with our consumers. And we're not only going to continue to listen to consumers, but we're also going to continue to adjust. One of the things that we had to do is that we had to improve the guest experience by reducing crowding. And it's tempting to let more and more people in. But if the guest satisfaction levels are going down because of crowding, that doesn't work. We had to figure out how we reduce crowding but maintain, obviously, our profitability. And we did that well, but we have to be careful about that as well, because in doing that, you're actually ending up increasing the price or putting features into your pricing that are viewed by some consumers perhaps being a little bit too aggressive, and that's what we are trying to be careful about. Not quite the quote that I wanted, but I thought that he goes on to include, okay, so let's go down beneath, but we can talk about this just for a second, actually. Because he's talking about, accessibility, being a brand value, actually. Remember how I said, oh, gee, this was years ago on the show at this point. Remember how I was talking about there's kind of this this philosophical idea of value as being connected by Disney. Even though they're very, very expensive, you get a lot for your money. And to that end, Bob Iger is admitting that, well, they kind of strayed away from that. And now they're going back to that, especially from the Chapek years, let's say. And I think that's really, really important. But he elaborates on these points to include even the possibility of expansions, and that's where he mentions Avatar. But guys, just that alone, though, that's an actually interesting quote, and one that didn't get a whole lot of coverage. What do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Candid. You kick us off, sir.
Cool. Appreciate it. So basically, when I go into the park, I spend X amount of money to get in there, right? I want that experience for myself and my family, no matter what it is. And that's down to eating, getting on rides, and just, the overall experience from the cast members. The last few times I've gone, it has been pre-pandemic since I've actually been. I've gone in there and the crowd started getting heavier and heavier, especially when they started having all the, the California or Southern California passes and stuff like that. I feel like that was taken away from the experience of other guests that they don't normally make it down there. So to hear that they're going to go back to the roots of when I used to go when I was a kid, bringing it back basically to the point where it is an experience that you're going to get a full experience in the park. And I think that kind of went away from me once they took away fast passes.
Yeah, we have seen some, let's say, microtransaction type processes take place or take hold, right? It's like, oh, you can get a base experience, but if you really want the super deluxe experience, you can have this and so forth. Not obviously that great. And didn't make people feel very good about the product, and especially when you add that into the reduction of services and so forth, I think that took a lot of people by surprise. And I think people started to associate the parks, I think, maybe differently than they had in years past. George, how do you feel about those comments? Do you feel those are encouraging, or is it just a bunch of fluff until something actually happens?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what off of what Candid was mentioning, I think it was to a point where we're creatures of habit. So when we get used to something and it sticks to our routine, especially for us diehard Disney fans, it's like you automatically surmise it in your mind that nothing is going to end up changing, whether for the better or the worse. And then when, as Candid pointed out, when they got rid of Fast Pass, add Genie Plus, add these lightning lanes, and they're tacking on these nickel and diming sort of features, but you're not really getting anything out of it except just heavier wait times, bad crowd control, so, but yet at the same time, Disney still needs to keep up with the crowds because they still need people to go through those turnstiles in order to make that revenue, to make that profit. So how do you go about doing that? You have, to my opinion, you have to expand in order to cut back on the crowd levels to kind of branch people out. But it's not necessarily where you're cutting costs, where the company's losing money.
Right.
Interesting.
If you don't mind me
OG?
jumping on that again. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, OG.
Oh, no. Ken,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay, I appreciate it. And kind of piggybacking off that too. Sometimes the expansion's is not what everyone wants or needs. I was content with just walking in and getting on Indy, and then running over to Pirates, and then getting that fast pass, and then running back to Indy right when I get off Pirates. That to me is a good day. The feeling of being equal in a park where we all stand in line, we all eat the same food, and we're all getting on the same rides. That kind of went away now with the Genie Plus. It almost seems like you have to be a different type of person or a different tier of person to match the same tier of being in the park. And that's where, and that's kind of, not everyone can do all that. Let's put it that way, especially that one-time trip that those families have. For instance, going to Walt Disney World from California, the flight alone is, costs more than going to Disneyland for a day. So, I don't have time to do a whole bunch of stuff, but now guess what? I'm not gonna be able to do all the stuff I've got to do there because I have to buy the Genie Plus now because I'm not gonna have the time to do it unless I do Genie Plus. So it's a circle.
It is. It's absolutely a circle. It's interesting. I mean, the theme park industry kind of reminds me a lot of like the video game industry. When I was a kid, you would just plug and play. Yeah, I had the regular NES. I would put in Mario Brothers, I'd put in Zelda, and I could just play it. And then over the years, they started to charge you for more memory, and they started to microtransaction you. It became like after you bought the game, that was just the beginning of your spending almost, right? Where before, when I was a kid, when you bought the game, you were done. You had the game and that was it. So the industry is changing. Unfortunately, Disney has sort of followed like the Universal route. Universal's been charging for their Fast Pass, Express Pass system for a long time. Disney decided, or Bob Chapek and his administration, right, decided, hey, we can jump on that money, and they did it, and they've been very successful. I mean, people, the Genie Plus thing, people buy into it. They buy into it so much that it's almost like, Andrea, you brought this point up a million times. They buy into it so much that it almost defeats the purpose. Like it's no longer a Fast Pass anymore because there's so many people in line. So many people are in that system, Yeah. It leads to problems. That whole thing with the Genie Plus and the Lightning Lane and all that, that's not going anywhere. That's a revenue stream for the mouse. They're going to definitely keep that. And honestly, I honestly feel like even the reservation system, when Bob Iger gets up there and he says that we're not going to raise prices per se, but we're going to mitigate demand in other ways, he's talking about reservation systems. Mm-hmm. That's what he's talking about, and that's how they're going to do it. And
you have to pick and choose your battles. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And this is where, we have an expectation for the company that, they don't get me wrong, they have a lot to work on and they have to fix a lot. But also us as the fans, we also have to take into consideration that, you don't want reservations, but at the same time, you don't want a large amount of crowds.
Right.
So it's like we are now at the point of no return because of what the world is now with new technology and what have you. It's like you can't go backwards. You have to move forwards. And unfortunately, sometimes the moving forward, it may not be to your liking.
Yeah, change is scary, and we're going to get into that because the fandom is really scared of change, and that's a big part of this whole equation that we'll address. I wanted to ask you fellows one question. In this quote here from Bob Iger, right? It's interesting. He says, here, hold on one sec. He says, well, it's interesting because of the things when you ask, you'll see it when you go. What we can do with businesses is we certainly in Florida, we have a lot of property and we have a lot of opportunity outside the United States. He goes on to say, though, we actually have more opportunity in California than people are aware as we continue to invest in those businesses. Now, I made a tweet saying this is kind of low key, kind of throwing shade at, I think, DeSantis and kind of saying, look, you know what? Yes, we have a huge business going on in Orlando and in Florida. We're not giving up on Florida, but you know what? Look, we have options though. Florida, we can put money into California. We have more options, more potential in this state than you might realize. Now, look, people kind of took my tweet as like saying like they're going to abandon Florida. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that it's the kind of the art of the deal, right? kind of situation where this is how you sort of pressure your opponents into caving or into kind of conceding some stuff, is that you kind of back off and say, well, I don't necessarily need you, and he's saying that, Iger is saying that to Florida. Look, you know what? You might think that we are 100% dependent on investing all the time in Florida. We're not. We have options here in California as well.
And trust me, it shows because honestly, I'm still waiting for them to do something in Florida, and this is where I agree with you, OG, with this quote that, yeah, they do have the land, but they constantly say we have the land, we have the blessing of size, but yet they don't utilize it properly at Walt Disney World. They take it for granted. And that's what gets me so heffed up with that. But to your point, when Iger had mentioned Disneyland, and I think that he's not even just addressing for the whole notion of what's going on in Florida right now with the politics, with DeSantis, with Reedy Creek. I think that is a big contributing factor. Definitely. He's kind of throwing out the shade without it being the shade, so to speak. But I also feel like that he's addressing us fans to that as well. Because knowing Iger, he's constantly on social media. He reads the trades, he reads the tweets, he reads everything. So I feel that when you have people in the Diz community, especially on like Diz Twitter, and they constantly say, "Oh, Disneyland can't do that. There's not enough room," or "You can't do," of what this whole conversation is going to be about when we get into talking about Avatar. People are constantly on social media saying, how can it be a whole entire land of Pandora? It's not going to fit. It's not going to go well in Disneyland. Well, Iger is basically saying it in this quote here that we do have ways around of doing things. And this is actually coming from the CEO himself. And I think a lot of people aren't really focusing on that too much, as opposed to rather than just say, okay, where's it going?
Well, yeah. And George, you got a great point here where it's like, fans tend to look at this stuff and they see any kind of obstacle as an excuse to say they won't do it. Fact of the matter is, they altered the rivers of America. The length and size of that river was altered. They rerouted the train and everything to fit Galaxy's Edge. So any obstacle you see in place here in regards to Pandora is you can overcome that. If Disney really wants to put something in that park, they're going to find a way, come hell or high water, to do it. We've seen it now with Galaxy's Edge. We've seen it now with Runaway Railway. I mean, they can do it. But what are your thoughts on this, Candid? Where are you at with this?
I think you're absolutely right. I'm just, back in the day, I was probably that person too, that they can't do that, or they have this land right here. They're going to use that for something that they're probably not even going to need to use it for. And then you see Galaxy's Edge come in, and that place is massive, and you're like, wow, they did some stuff here. So I can see them doing whatever they want and putting all that money here in California versus Florida. I can see them doing that too. They say they have the land. I haven't seen them expand that land out at all. It's always replacing a ride or doing a retheme or putting it inside, the general circle that they already have. So yeah, I can see it happening. And who says? I mean, that could be also I just like deeper reading into that a little deeper too. That could also be him saying that we already bought these other portions of land. So I remember watching one of your old videos showing, I think what was it that they already kind of blocked off that garden walk section as Disney property. So who knows? That could also be another hint at something in the future too.
Yeah, there are moves I think being made in California. Obviously, Disneyland Ford is a big part of that, no question. But they still hold the real estate that they gathered from Eastern Gateway and so forth. That we don't really think that's going to be a park expansion, but that would be more infrastructure to support expansion and growth generally at Disneyland Resort. And I do think Iger is hinting at that because I think investors are kind of, again, you have to consider the audience that he's speaking to. I think investors are kind of like, ooh, what are they going to do in Florida with this situation? It's like, oh, hang on, guys, don't worry about it. No matter what happens in Florida, whether it goes our way or doesn't go our way, we have expansion opportunities in California. We can still grow the business. And I think that's what he's speaking about with the bulk of those comments. However, there is, maybe a little shade at DeSantis for sure. It's interesting because it's the triangle, right? So it's the, low crowds, low price, and then all access, right? You can only have two sides of that triangle at any one time. Well, there's a way in which you can add capacity to the parks by via expansions, and that's kind of Bob Iger's next point, and that's what gets us into the Avatar conversation. So he says, continuing on with where you read, OG. Let's see. As we continue to invest in those businesses, which is essentially building out new capacity or new attractions, it gives us the ability to, one, service more people. The more attractions you have, obviously, the more people have to do. And we can also mine our IP more effectively. So we announced in the earnings call that we're going to build an Avatar experience at Disneyland. Period. Doesn't say resort, doesn't say as part of Disneyland Ford, just says Disneyland. That's key.
And real quick, Dre, he's emphasizing building out capacity. People need to realize this when he says this. This is significant. This isn't going to be and we'll dive into this more in a little bit, but this isn't going to be like a 1 acre nothing thing. They want to expand capacity. That's a sizable thing. This is not something that's going to be this dinky little thing in the corner,
Correct. And he goes on from that. He says, it has done extremely well in Florida. What's done extremely well in Florida? Oh, you mean the Avatar experience that they have in Florida? All right, so he's directly comparing those again. Those are really important because those franchises that we do well with in film and in television are truly leverageable at the parks level, as we learned with the Star Wars investments that we've made, the Avatar investment that we made in Florida, the Toy Story investments that we've made. So he's comparing, like in the same breath that he's talking about the Avatar experience at Disneyland, what is he mentioning? He's mentioning Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. He's mentioning Toy Story Land. He's mentioning, Pandora. He's talking about growth potential, right? He's talking about the adding stuff that provides more things for people to do. It doesn't sound small scale. Sounds a little bit larger.
And I know that we're going to get into Avatar on its own, but I have to touch upon this of what he was saying too. And this is where, Dre, you're probably going to possibly disagree with me on this, but here we go.
I think we're going to get into it right now, actually.
Should we do wait, hold on real quick. We're getting into, we're going to have a nerd war. There we go.
Exactly,
So
right?
based off of the quotes of what Iger was saying, that he was saying franchises, plural, as you were saying, he brought up the notion of Star Wars. He brought up Toy Story. Mm-hmm. And also part of that quarterly earnings where he brought up for the film division, he said sequels for Toy Story, Zootopia, and Frozen, because those are franchises that people know, they love, and quite frankly, they make money. They make a whole lot of money. And so that's when he mentioned, I was talking to Josh DeMauro this morning about incorporating more of those franchises into the parks. And I think I feel that obviously Avatar is the headliner right now because that's the specific one that he had mentioned during the quarterly earnings. And it's what the talk of the town because it's going in Disneyland and people are really trying to get a definitive answer from him. Where is this going? But I also feel too that this is going to be the start for Disneyland Forward. Now, I'm not saying that Avatar is going to be part of Disneyland Forward, but I feel like this is going to be the kickoff, so to speak, down the road. Not saying that they're going to have a land on top of a land on top of, obviously, because the Eastern Gateway has to be approved first. But I feel like that this is kind of setting the stage because we've had sources say Disneyland Forward is quote unquote moving forward, and with the 2028 Olympics coming and what have you, that they're going to want to have something big with the amount of tourists that are probably going to be traveling in through there. So I personally feel that Avatar is the starting point for Disneyland Forward. Even though it's going in Disneyland Park, and I agree with you fellas, I don't feel like it's going in DCA. I don't feel like it's going to be an extra expansion as part of Disneyland Forward, but I feel that when Iger mentions multiple franchises as being plural in that statement, and he even brings up Toy Story, that he's talking, as you had mentioned, Dre, a bigger viewpoint than just one little attraction.
Well, and it goes back to the California statement where he says that we have more opportunity in California than people think.
Correct.
So maybe he's talked to Anaheim and obviously it hasn't gotten approved yet because we would have heard that, but maybe there's indications internally that they're going to sign off on this thing.
And we all know that we've constantly said this before. This is about Iger's legacy. And whether or not he has a 2 to 3 year agreement as the CEO of the company before it gets passed on to Dana Walden or what have you, someone else, he's going to want to leave the company on a higher pursuit than when he did back in 2020. So I feel like that he's going to want his name, where even though Disneyland Forward obviously won't be completed while he is still as CEO, but I have a feeling he's going to want to be the one to spearhead to say, my name is going to be on this to start from generation after generation, that it's going to start with me.
And what you could do if you wanted to signify this as the start of Disneyland Forward, what you could do is you could bring out concept artwork for an Avatar experience at Disneyland, put that right in front of the board and say, hey, we're doing this at Disneyland, but we'd like to do expansions like this in the future, given the amount of real estate that we actually own. Disneyland, if you approve Disneyland Forward, we can provide experiences like this, but throughout, and really expand our footprint here.
Do you think that's why Iger is kind of teasing that notion that he's not giving a definitive space, because he could be using Avatar as the way of kind of getting the Anaheim City Council kind of on board with this?
It would be, and I was talking to OG about this last night, actually. It would be unwise to directly tie Avatar to Disneyland Forward, because Disneyland Forward is not completely in their control. And if you were to say, hey, we'll build Avatar as part of Disneyland Forward specifically, then what happens if they say no? They say no, you can never build an Avatar at Disneyland.
Correct. That's why I'm thinking, do you think they're kind of using that as the headliner for Disneyland Forward? So kind of get them to kind of get their toes wet a little bit to say, hey, this is the potential that we could have.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the potential. This is, we can only create one of these here, but given the amount of real estate that we own and given the freedom by you, the board, we can build one of these everywhere, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Candid, am I off base here? Is that about right?
Sounds good to me. I feel like, personally, though, what is more important for Disneyland Forward? Is it really going to be Avatar, or is it actually getting to build that bridge? Be able to get to the rest of your property. I think if they really wanted to focus on that, that would be their first step, and then trying to get people off of was it Harbor Boulevard?
There are logistical issues that have to be overcome for sure before any themed experience can actually take place. That is
the Eastern
absolutely
Gateway. The Eastern Gateway for Disneyland Forward is a must. That's like the first thing. If that doesn't get approved or that doesn't start having the construction capacity, there's no way that they could look at anything else beyond that for Disneyland Forward until that gets the green light.
Well, another
Yeah,
thing
exactly.
that kind of strikes me too is the hotel. You know, they're just keep repainting and repainting and repainting. Like
Yeah.
if they're really going to do something, I mean, I guess they need, they do need the capacity. They need to be able to put these, these people in these beds for now. But what are you going to do with the future? Like
Yeah.
you're going to have to tear that down if you need that land.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Pixar.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, the Pixar Place Hotel. I think that's the official name of it. Pixar Place. That hotel, I think, is very much a temporary solution. This whole kind of rebranding of Pixar is, I think, just to buy Disney in maybe another decade. Until they find look, and they're going to have to, like in Candy, you bring up a great point. I mean, those are all those rooms, I mean, they're going to have to find a solution, an alternative to losing those rooms. If they bulldoze that hotel, they're obviously going to have another hotel up and ready before they do that. And I think that's kind of what this kind of Pixar retheme is about, is just sort of having it as presentable and as sellable as possible for the next decade or so. So they can book those rooms, get another hotel built.
Yeah.
And then when that other hotel is built, then you bulldoze the Pixar hotel. And that's how you expand DCA. It's definitely a placemaker thing. I don't think the Pixar hotel is a long-term. This is not a 15, 20-year plan with this hotel at all. This is a Band-Aid, 5-10 years.
I'd be inclined to believe that. I mean, if you look at this, if you look at the Imagine the Possibilities as part of the concept artwork for Disneyland Forward, you can see what Canada's actually talking about here. If you want to go ahead and share my screen, OG.
I got you.
You can see Pixar Place Hotel is part of this rendering here, but you can see there's a slew of parking garages and so forth in order to make up for that lost capacity from the symbol lot and so forth. Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's one of those things. I mean, they can they continue to utilize it? Sure, but I don't know. I think they would like to open that up just a little bit. These things change, obviously.
But,
go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, but for the time being, if they do decide to demolish that, whether or not they have another hotel, yes, it would be more rooms that would be taken off of the plate until something gets built back up. But Disneyland has something, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had my fair share of issues with the Good Neighbor hotels on South on Harbor Boulevard and West Catella. But I mean, a lot of people tend to utilize those hotels more because of the pricing, the value, the pricing for the hotels rather than stay on property. Now, I mean, me personally, would I love to stay on Disneyland Hotel? Yes, of course, but I don't feel like I should have to sell my kidney in order to do so. So that's where I feel Disneyland kind of has an upper bound, that if they were to remove a hotel off of their property for the time being, I still feel like they would be safe because people would be going for that core value outside of the resort and maybe staying at like an Airbnb or something nearby that is adjacent to the resort.
That's that tiers once again, that I mentioned earlier. Like I stayed in a Disneyland hotel once, and that was when I was like 7.
Yeah.
I'm a full grown adult now, and I'm not a hotel person though. Let's put it that way. Let me rephrase that. I go to the park, I wake up, I'm there at rope drop, I'm there until the closing, I walk back, I lay in the bed, and I repeat. So I know there is people that are out there that actually go swimming. They, like to enjoy cocktail, eat the dinner there. So I guess it kind of makes sense for there to be more of a luxury hotel, especially a Disney branded one.
Yes, and that's the thing, George. Yeah, I mean the the resort and how it works will be fine if they take off a hotel, right? But the Disney company would not, because that's a astounding amount of revenue potential taken
correct.
offline.
Yeah.
So you would have to build another resort if you were to ever take the Pixar Pier Hotel down. That's why it's like, well, we're not doing that right now. So what can we do in the interim? Well, we can just refurbish this hotel and get it to a point where it's not embarrassing and sell for the time being.
Too late.
Here's the thing, though. With any expansion that comes, whether it's the concept artwork you're looking at right now, which I think, is a little bit ambitious, but let's say even half of this, they're going to have to add some more hotel capacity in order to really kind of get the full ROI that they expect from any expansion opportunity. Go ahead, OG.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just say, that hotel, that fourth hotel that they were planning to build, which they gave up on because the city was like hassling them over like 100 feet, that whole thing.
Yes.
I think there would have been a real possibility of demolishing the Paradise Pier Hotel if that was actually built, because you would have gained those rooms, like we're talking about, and then now they can afford to bulldoze this old hotel. And this Pixar, real quick, George, this Pixar hotel that they're repainting now seems like a last minute thing. It's probably was last minute because they weren't expecting to keep it as long as they were. They probably were going to demolish it after that fourth hotel. Now they got to do a Band-Aid and address it. Go ahead, George. I do apologize, sir.
Oh, no, you're fine. Actually, that just segues into my question. Where do you fellas think that the newer hotel would be placed in order to demolish Pixar Place Hotel, because right where that hotel stands right now, that is like literally right smacked up against DCA, which they get rid of that would completely free up room for a DCA expansion. So where would the newer hotel be placed if the one that they originally proposed, but it got shot down by the city, where would now you think it would go?
What I would do, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, Dre, but I think this was actually one of the concepts with Westcott. I would have a hotel that kind of circles the park, and you can utilize it as a berm. Obviously, the hotel would be themed to whatever the theme of the park is, but have it surrounding it as like a berm. And number one, it serves many purposes. Number one, it makes the theme park more immersive because you're surrounding it and you're blocking that outside world. But number two, the park view rooms that you could sell people for a high price would make Disney a metric ton of money.
So basically keep the hotel where it is placed, but just build the expansion around it so the hotel then becomes part of the park.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't keep this hotel though. I would build a brand new one.
Not this particular one. This one's good as dirt.
Yeah, bulldoze it and build it actually a themed hotel all the way around, surrounding the theme park.
And we've seen concepts like this. Westcott is obviously like the best interpretation of this, but we've seen concepts like that even with like the Grand Californian, Disneyland Paris's Disneyland Hotel. We've seen the front of Tokyo Disney Seas actually incorporate this idea. Now we're seeing Epic Universe and Universal Beijing actually incorporate these ideas. I think that's the smartest play right there. You encircle the park with hotel capacity. You provide that berm for you, and then you're good to go with whatever happens inside of there. So I think that's what they're thinking about doing, at least in part. We'll see how they do that. I think it will be a very interesting idea. Go ahead.
And one more question for you guys before we move on. This is a sizable piece of property. Now, it's a weird kind of shape. It's this like rectangle. It's very narrow but wide, right? It's a weird shape. Is there any scenario where this piece of property right here becomes the third park? I know Disney sold it as Disneyland and DCA expansion, but that was just to sell the zoning. Is it possible they'd change their mind and go, you know what, we can fit a park here?
If actually of what you fellas are saying, that if you were to build the newer hotel in the center of that, demolish Pixar Place, and then the whole scope around that, I mean, even though it's more long than wide, I mean, I still think that you can get a decent sized park in there. I mean, what do you think, Dre?
Well, then you don't even have to, because if you were to expand Disneyland and DCA, then you have to work with the city to bury Disneyland Drive because you have to have a bridge go over that street. If this is its own park, you don't have to do that. Right?
Yeah, it's true. I would have to do an acreage calculation on this and just see. I mean, they just added a new Disneyland Hotel tower, right? So we have to assume that Disneyland Hotel is staying. So that
It's
in the
safe.
middle of your park is right there.
Right.
So you have to take all that land out, and then you have to provide a parking structure, which this actually provides. And in this shot here, you see it'd be to the west and northwest of the Disneyland Hotel property. You see that kind of long building with those slits right there. That's a parking garage right there. So you had to provide that as well. So that reduces your acreage even further. I don't see it. I don't quite see it. I think this makes much more sense as an expansion to DCA.
Okay, let me ask you this straight. Don't take the actual concept that you're looking at, like with the parking garages, because Disney still may be able to maneuver things of putting it in a different location. But true. Just the aesthetics of the land itself, can it withhold a third theme park if they wanted to, as far as just the overall size of it itself?
Like I said, I had to do some acreage calculations, but you'd have to make up for the parking loss of Downtown Disney. Have to make up for the parking loss of the cast member lot that's on there.
So one way or the other, they would have to still do the Eastern Gateway if they were to do this as a third park.
Well,
absolutely.
Eastern Gateway would have to. I mean, no matter what you do,
right.
Whether it's this as a third park or this as an expansion, you have to do Eastern Gateway because the parking capacity right now for the entire resort is actually below what it was. Well, it just went over, but it was for a long time below what it was before they even built anything on DCA property. This for the Disneyland Hotel parking. I'm sorry, Disneyland Resort or Disneyland parking lot adjacent to the park. That had more parking capacity than Disneyland Resort did for a lot of years. So you have to keep that in flux. You have to build capacity for these hotels. That's why I just don't see them making this a full park because you'd have so many hindrances in place. But go ahead, Ken.
I got an idea. Just kind of there's this random one I got for you now.
Sure.
What if you take out all those hotels? Take out all the hotels from that area.
Mm-hmm.
Take out downtown Disney. That's why I'm gonna kind of piggyback on that thing earlier. When they said that we're going to put that new hotel down there, I was not a fan of that. I thought that was a lot of wasted space that they could have been using for something else. If they got approved for the Eastern Gateway, put all that on that side. Use that strawberry patch, put everything down there, even a new downtown area, and then you could just connect them that way and use all the rest of that land for expansion. I think it would make it easier. Then you have your own little resort section for just hotels. Have your transportation back and forth. I think it would be easier. Your shopping.
Wasn't that actually somewhat of a concept that Disney gave when they showed that little area that was supposed to be more like for shopping, dining, like that little complex that was part of the proposed
on the Toy Story lot?
Yeah. So would that have been taking the place?
Yeah, right
there. Would that have been taking the place of Downtown Disney if that part was to go forward?
Not in this concept. Downtown Disney still exists. You can actually see it on the map here. You see that between Disneyland and Disney California.
I see that.
It wouldn't be a replacement. It'd be to augment what they have already. And that's the thing. In an ideal world, Canon, absolutely do that. But they're so limited on hotel capacity. I can't see them getting rid of. It would be, at this point, I think it's like 1,200 or 1,400 rooms that they have with that new DVC tower in order to relocate it somewhere else. What is most likely to happen is you would build another hotel to add to that capacity. It's just, how the Disneyland Resort was actually laid out years prior. You kind of have to work within that framework. And that's why they're like, well, we can use these to expand Disneyland and expand Disney California Adventure, but not actually make that a new park. Again, I'd have to do some calculations though to see if that would work because
Coming up on Orange
don't
Grove
know.
55.
Yeah, we'll definitely revisit. We'll definitely revisit. But I think we got a video from Dave from Fresh Baked that we're gonna kind of like go through because he makes some interesting predictions. And Candid, I do apologize for the credit over your face. I do apologize, sir. I will take that off in a moment. I do apologize. I just want to give Fresh Baked credit for this. But we're gonna go through this. We're gonna kind of pause along the way and react. Dre, if you could do the honors.
You got it.
That's just what Disney did. So it must mean something, right? What I'm talking about is an article published on D23. The article? Avatar stars react to news of Pandora coming to the Disneyland Resort. And the first comment in this article is from Jack Champion, who played Spider in Way of Water. He said that he's, quote, so excited for Avatar fans to experience the world of Pandora just like we did here at Disneyland Resort. Jack said Disneyland. Disney added, parenthetically, Resort. Next we hear from Jolie Bliss, who played Took. She said, quote, oh my gosh, Avatar is coming to Disneyland Resort. Again, Disney adds the parenthetic tag Resort to her comment about Disneyland. One more quote from Bailey Bass, who played Saria in the movie.
And that's interesting. We talked about how they did add that at the time, OG. Do you remember
Right.
that?
Yeah.
So we weren't, we obviously, read this article at the time knowing that D23 themselves were saying resort.
But
Dave takes that in a different direction here.
yes,
Go
but
ahead.
here's the other thing though. Yes, they did add resort, right? Yes. Well, number one, Disneyland Resort doesn't exclude Disneyland because Disneyland is part of the resort.
Correct.
So that doesn't necessarily mean it's automatically DCA.
Right.
But if we look at Bob Iger's the transcripts from his little spiel, it says right here, we announced in the earnings call that we are going to build an Avatar experience at Disneyland.
Yes.
Nowhere in this transcript, at least in this paragraph, does he say resort. Now, this is coming from Bob Iger. He's the CEO of the company. This guy is at Imagineering looking at models and plans all day long. Okay.
He's much closer to this than D23 is, let's say. Go ahead.
He's way closer to this than the editors at D23. Okay. Look, we heard, okay, so they added resort. Okay, Disneyland Resort in the D23 article, and then we have Disneyland here from Bob Iger's mouth. Well, none of that points to DCA, though. It still all points to Disneyland.
Could it still be the other way around, where you could still say Disneyland, but still mean resort, but without actually saying resort? Now, again, I only question that, but I still feel like it's going in Disneyland Park, because even like at times when I say Walt Disney World, I don't always necessarily attach resort to the title. So could he have just said in his quote, oh, it's coming to Disneyland? Because there are times where if I say I'm going to Disneyland, I don't necessarily mean I'm going to Disneyland Park.
True. But when you say Walt Disney World, that is the resort. When you say Disneyland, well, now that's the park. So you have to say resort if you're talking about the resort, right? That's the difference. The thing about it is, look,
then I've been saying it wrong for years.
No,
but then again,
Walt Disney
I'm
World
not.
Is the
No. That I mean, like when I mentioned Disneyland, like if I was to say, but then again, I was a late bloomer for Disneyland, so Disneyland lingo is different than Walt Disney World.
And you can say Disneyland, and in layman's terms, when you talk about Disneyland, you're, like it's interchangeable, right? But at the corporate level and his level, okay, if it was going to DCA, he'd say DCA.
But
because
also he
talks about Pandora going into Animal Kingdom, for example, not Walt Disney World.
And no discredit to Mr. Iger, but I mean, let's face it, Disney has not been the best of the best when it comes to spell check and quotes lately. So it's
that's funny.
No, no, they haven't. But this guy, Bob Iger, is a very smart corporate
I'm sorry,
animal.
OG, but really quick, just end my thing. But I still personally feel like with you guys, it's going in Disneyland Park. I really do. I can't see it at DCA.
Go ahead, OG.
But go ahead, OG.
Well, I was just gonna say when Bob Iger gets up there, this guy, and we've talked many times about this on the channel. He is a very, very savvy PR guy. He knows how to sell. He could sell ice to an Eskimo. Okay, this guy convinced Steve Jobs to sell Pixar after all the drama that company went with, all the drama that Pixar had with Disney under Eisner. Bob Iger was able to go in there and convince Steve Jobs to sell to them. He's very good at this, and I do not find anything he says to be an accident. If he's saying Disneyland, it's going to be Disneyland. And I agree with you, Dre. If this is the thing, this is what I don't understand. Okay.
Sorry, OG. I think I hear something in the background there.
Oh, hold on. You got the train. Hold on one sec. Hold on. Here we go.
Oh no! I must have hit that track switch.
There you go. Thank you, George. I appreciate that, sir.
Yes.
I don't know. Here's the thing I don't understand. Okay. I've seen this a lot on Twitter, fandom, whatever. This kind of notion of like, they're hinting to us as DCA, but they're never saying DCA. Like, why would they hint to us as DCA? If they want to put it in DCA, just say it's going into DCA.
Yeah.
Why do we have to go through all these roundabout, like hint, wink, wink, Disneyland Resort? We're going to say Disneyland, but we really mean DCA. Why would they do that? That makes no sense.
And I'm willing to give Dave from Fresh Baked a little bit of slack because remember the comments that Bob Iger made for Morgan Stanley came out post video. Okay, so
Right.
I get it, I understand it, but even here, this is from February 8th. This is from the original quarterly earnings call, and he says Disneyland. He says Disneyland multiple times. Yeah, when it comes to D23, it's like, okay, yeah, but they're saying Disneyland Resort, but that's still that Disneyland still is part of that.
Right.
And of course they wouldn't want to, they want to be general about it right now, partially because they don't even know. But secondly, it's you're not locking yourself down to any one portion of the resort. So it's like it's really weird how everybody's like, "Oh, you see, that's evidence that it's going across the Esplanade." And it's like, why do you think that? Like, there's no evidence to suggest that that's where it's going.
Well, and it's even a lot of people are arguing that, where are you going to fit it right now in Disneyland Park? Well, right now, where can you fit it in DCA? Unless you're actually going to expand DCA out, which obviously they can't right now because of those. Where is it actually going? But again, Dave had mentioned, which it'll probably go into,
and we'll discuss that. Yeah. But here's the other thing too. And I know people, they're constantly saying that DCA is no longer about California. So, we'll just throw Pandora in there. That's just not true though. And I keep saying this, everything that in DCA has at least some tie to California. Cars Land is Route 66 in car culture, very California. Pixar Pier, yes, it's Pixar, but it's a pier at the core. That's California. Buena Vista Street, California. Hollywood Land, California. Grizzly Peak, California. Even Avengers Campus, it's very much inspired and modeled after Silicon Valley. If you Google the Google campus in Northern California, they have the same tile work as Avengers Campus. The backstory for the Web Slingers is a Stark Automotive Factory from California. Yes, it's IP, but this park still at its core is very California. Pandora has nothing to do with California. And Dre, you brought this to my attention last night. In the movie, Earth isn't even like they don't even have like breathable air. Is that correct?
Yes. There are lines in the films that kind of allude to this, but in Avatar lore, Earth is basically dead. Okay, it's largely uninhabitable because of pollution and climate change and all those kind of things that have affected.
Well, that'll still fit in California.
Pollution, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh man,
should we continue?
Yes, I think we should. Here we go.
She said she's, quote, over the moon about the Avatar expansion to Disneyland Resort. Now, I'm one of those people who believes that words have meaning, especially when those words are edited.
Wait, pause it real quick.
You
know what? I completely agree with Dave. Words have meaning. Disneyland, right there. Words have
Yes.
meaning.
They do have meaning. That's it. But Dave, I don't look. I'm not going to attack him. I'm not. I think he's a wonderful content creator. However,
Absolutely.
he says words matter here, but then they don't matter, in other contexts. So let's see.
Especially when those words are edited by Disney. 3 times Disney added the parenthetical resort to a comment made about Disneyland. From this, I would be inclined to infer that whatever this as yet undefined Avatar experience is not going to be at Disneyland. At the Disneyland Resort, yes, but not at Disneyland specifically. If it were at Disneyland, I don't feel like they would have gone out of their way to clarify that it was at the Disneyland Resort and not just Disneyland. Now, I think they're okay with you hearing Disneyland because the word Disneyland, the term Disneyland, is far more marketable than Downtown Disney or California Adventure. It's the reason why a while back, they rebranded everything here to be called the Disneyland Resort. Everything is all part of the Disneyland Resort. That wasn't always the case. It's the reason why they add Disney California Adventure on the name of California Adventure, even though everybody calls it California Adventure or DCA, in my opinion. Now, this is by no means 100% fact. I mean, I can't say that this is for sure. These videos are about speculation and trying to read between the lines. Personally, I was
Very true. Very
That's
true.
fair. Yeah, absolutely.
already
Absolutely.
inclined to think it.
Go ahead.
Well, and I was just gonna say it's all in fun. Like what we do, we speculate. It's all in fun. What Dave does, it's all in good fun. And like you said, Dre, we love Dave's content, and we're just having a conversation. We're nerding out over this stuff. I think we're all on the same page at the end of the day in terms of being excited for this. So
Yes.
whether we're wrong, whether he's wrong, whether Twitter is wrong, it doesn't really matter. We're all super over the moon excited.
And I am as well. Me personally, I'll take it one step further. I'm excited whether or not it goes in Disneyland Park. I'm excited whether it goes into DCA. But wherever they put this thing, and based off of what Iger is saying, because he is going back to comparing it to Disney's Animal Kingdom, it has to be up to that caliber.
Right.
So as I said, me personally, I don't care what it is, where it's put, as long as it's done well.
Well, and here's the thing too, George. I love California Adventure. I've been saying all along, California Adventure needs another e-ticket. I want to see them really put a lot of money into DCA. So believe me, I would love to see DCA get a huge land like Pandora. I mean, not necessarily Pandora,
Right, not
match the
exactly
theme,
Pandora, right.
but like a Pandora. I want that for this park, but that's not what we're getting. I got to be realistic. It's going into Disneyland, and all signs point to that. But yeah. Anyway, I think Dave would appreciate you unpausing it. It looks a little funny.
Oh, sorry. Well, you can never control these things.
Speculation and trying to read between the lines. Personally, I was already inclined to think it was going to California Adventure, and these comments only seem to reinforce that for me. Disneyland Resort. Oh, by the way, another word that Bailey Bass used was expansion. Does Bailey Bass know something that we should? That's a very specific word to describe what Disney is doing with Avatar. Specific in a way that it suggests that this is not a temporary exhibit. Temporary one, kind of like the one that we saw at Singapore, where my first thoughts went to. Expansion suggests something greater, something that's more along the lines of a land, perhaps. Whenever we hear the word expansion, we think, bigger than that. Expansion suggests something permanent and something of scale. It also suggests...
Yeah. Welcome to the party, Dave.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing. This is I have an honest, genuine question about this. I think he brings up an interesting point here about expansion, right? I know they use the word expansion when it came to Galaxy's Edge because, well, at least in Disneyland's case, it was an expansion. They expanded into backstage. It was an expansion. Did they use that same terminology when they did the Galaxy's Edge in Florida? Because it wasn't an expansion. They bulldozed something else and built on top of it. I don't really remember that. And I know we're getting like into the semantics here.
You're building on something though, because if Dave's playing that game with the words and the quotes and everything, expansion's a key term. because
It
it
is.
I
can
don't.
mean
I
adding on
don't.
to something.
Yeah, I don't think. Don't quote me, but I don't recall them ever saying the term expansion for Walt Disney Worlds.
Okay.
Because even when it came to Toy Story Land, I never heard them say Toy Story expansion because that was all replaced. That all replaced the backlot.
Yeah, it's a key term, and I think it's one of the reasons why Iger's not using that yet, because I think they're keeping it vague on purpose
Right.
until they actually find out what they're actually going to do. It's interesting because he is right. Bailey said that, right? Expansion. Well, here's what you have to think. Where did she get that term from? Was she, when she was told Avatar's coming to Disneyland Resort or whatever, however D23 relayed that information to her, did they use expansion? And
Now,
that's
was
why
she
used
the
it?
only
Interesting.
one that used that term? No one else used it but her.
I would have to take a look actually. Who said what where? I thought it was just her though. Let me see.
Okay.
Because they are very, like, whenever you watch a video when they are actually about to do anything like that, it is retheme, reskin, expansion. So those words they're not thrown around. They're put into place. So that could be a huge thing that just was pointed out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. These are PR pieces, they're like, it's like car companies. When a car company creates a commercial, none of this stuff is by accident. When they have the 20-something-year-old male with a 20-something-year-old female and whatever race they are and all that's all carefully crafted to sell vehicles. None of it is just an accident. Same with this stuff. When D23 is putting something out, it's to sell it, right? Oh, there it is.
It's just her.
Okay.
Just her says expansion. So take that for what it is. It's a key term, and it was included for a purpose, for a reason. Obviously the editors were looking over the language closely. Let's see what else Dave has to say.
Well, real quick,
Sorry,
I just want to say too, expansion doesn't always necessarily mean no new land. New physical land though too, because what you can say with expansion is, look, we're adding another land to Disneyland, right? Because right now, if you take out the submarines, Autopia, and the motorboat area, right? Those are technically part of Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. If you add Pandora in that spot, even though it's on existing land, you're technically expanding Disneyland though, because it's a new land. You're adding one more land to the list of lands they have. That's an expansion, technically. So that's also another way to look at it.
I think they all know what's going on. They're just throwing different words out of different people just to throw us off.
I know. It's driving us nuts.
Throw us off the trail. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Go ahead.
By that, I mean, we're going beyond what already exists. They are expanding the Disney park. And there's one more comment after that. There's something that the D23 team, the writers of this article, actually said. Per the D23 team, quote, while details on the coming Avatar experience remain under wraps, it promises to be as amazing as those found at Walt Disney World Resort. As amazing as what's found at Walt Disney World. As amazing as Pandora. That's a very high bar because Pandora is in fact amazing. So that word, again, suggests something that goes beyond a temporary exhibit or some smaller attraction. Now, having said all of that, which is a thing that I am fond of saying when we're doing speculation, having said all of that, this is not Disney speaking directly. These are cast members and D23, which is just a fan site.
So now words don't matter.
After
Gotcha.
After all that.
all right. Throw it out. There we go. This is where, okay.
This could all just be hype. Hyperbole. In fact, it probably is hype. That's exactly what these kind of articles are for, is to build hype. Meanwhile, the comments made by the Avatar cast come off as, well, not exactly organic or even, real. They kind of sound like something you might hear from an NPC in a role-playing game, scripted. And that is exactly the kind of thing that Disney would do if they were trying to promote something. It's all very choreographed, arranged, written, which is, going back to one of my original points, why words have meaning. Because Disney chose those words. They were fed to the people writing the article and fed to the cast members making those comments.
Now we're back on.
Now we're back on
again.
Now we're back on. Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's
I don't know. We keep moving. Here.
We just had to say though, we love you, Dave.
We do love
We do.
Dave. And I got to be real too. I watch because I'm a California guy. I grew up, born and raised in California, right? I'm at Disneyland all the freaking time. Not as much as Dave, but I'm there like once or twice a month. Okay. So there's very few, and I know I make Disney park content, but I don't really watch a lot of like in-park Disney vloggers. I really don't. There's only a handful. I watch Fresh Baked and I watch Enchanted Explorers and Provo's Park Pass, but there's only a handful that I really watch. Okay. So I tune into Dave's channel all the time. All the time. I love his content. I'm a huge fan. And the fact that we're showcasing him on this channel and we're having fun, we're just speculating. We're all nerds here. We're all just having fun with it. So in no way is this like, we're trying to throw shade or anything like that. This is just having fun, trying to get down to the bottom of this. What does this mean? And that's all it really is. So I completely echo your sentiments.
Expansion as amazing as Disneyland Resort. Those are encouraging observations from where I sit. And all being led by the watchful eye of new creative chief executive Bruce Vaughn. I am very optimistic for both the Avatar experience and for Disney parks in general. So what could this new Avatar experience be? We've talked about that a little bit. For one, again, I think it's something that's going in California Adventure. And right now, my speculation is that I'm going to go with the Redwood Creek Little Mermaid rumor. An experience that would include an outdoor land, much like the kind of experience you might find at Pandora, with all the lush greenery and vegetation and all that. An outdoor land or area experience that would exist in the Redwood Creek space. And then an indoor attraction, possibly a dark ride, in the Ariel's Undersea Adventure show building.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dre. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. You're like, okay. I know you're triggered now. Let's get the rage out. Okay. Here we go.
Let's get the rage out.
Let's get the rage out. Okay. All right. Now, I'm gonna be calm about this. We're gonna be calm.
There you go.
All right. So, looking at Ariel's Undersea Adventure, we're talking about a 1-acre building. Okay, one that is, I think, just had its 10-year anniversary not too long ago, and really provides a kind of an all-family dark ride that, honestly, frankly, DCA is in very much need of, right? And then you have Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, which is about 1.3 acres or so, right? So we're gonna take a 2.3 acre parcel of DCA and redo it to Pandora when there are plenty of parcels about that same size to choose from dotted all around Disneyland Resort. There's one behind Avengers Campus. There's one to the north of Hollywoodland. There's one in between Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Toontown. And that's not even getting to the north of Tomorrowland. But we're gonna take this right here. I'll buy it. Okay, I just don't get why the fascination with this parcel. It just doesn't make much sense. It does the business that is meant to be doing. Go ahead, George.
No, but not even to the land, because I've experienced Pandora down at Walt Disney World, and even the Little Mermaid show building.
Yes.
That's not even a third of the show building that holds Flight of Passage.
Not even close.
That show building is massive,
huge,
and
huge.
there's no way.
How big it is.
Yeah, please, because there's no way in comparison to the Little Mermaid show building that would ever fit in I mean, you could possibly maybe get the Navi River, but I mean, if you had to pick and choose, if they said that the experience is going to be just as good as Animal Kingdom and you had to pick one attraction, they're not going to choose Navi River over Flight of Passage.
No,
So
absolutely not.
if you don't mind me
Go ahead,
asking you this
Ken.
though, sorry for interrupting. Why not just go with the whole area, even Grizzly River Run, and using what is it, Soarin'? I mean, then not only that,
that's
I know we're going to
interesting.
bring up Bruce Vaughn later. There's going to be some stuff with that. It doesn't have to be the same exact ride or same exact scale of Pandora, because I've been to Disney Walt Disney World too, and that place is like Pandora's massive, and that's another thing too, sightlines and all that. How are you going to do that?
That's an interesting point, Candid. One I
Yeah.
honestly have never considered. And then, Grizzly Peak, obviously you'd have to get rid of the grizzly bear on the top, but it's a very foresty, rocky area. You have, like you mentioned, you have like the building for Soarin', and then you can maybe expand into the Redwood Creek area a little bit too. I don't know. What do you think about that, Dre? Possibility or?
I will say this, Ken. It's far more tangible than just taking the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail area and Ariel's Undersea Adventure. Again,
Absolutely.
I find that, I mean, look, I'm not gonna beat up on Dave, but I think that some of this comes from not logical inference, but a little bit of bias, a little bit of motivation, a little bit of it's not necessarily from logic and reason. It doesn't quite make sense. Now, Candid, I will say, if you take Soarin', if you take Grizzly River Run, maybe even include Redwood Creek Challenge Trail with that, you're talking about a pretty good size. I think combined all that, I think that would get you up to about 8 acres or so. Here's the issue, though. Yeah, I mean, Grizzly River Run, it's unfortunate that that's like in the middle where it's at, because you have to constantly walk around it. When you're in DCA, you got to constantly walk around that thing all the time. And it's not utilized to the extent that it maybe should be for large swaths of the year. So that is kind of like, it's a little bit unfortunate, but I just don't see them doing anything with that for Pandora. Not while there's untapped potential all over the place, right? I just don't see them doing that. And Soarin' is a huge is a huge crowd pleaser. So I don't see them necessarily doing anything with that either. What you're looking at, if you're looking at doing something different with one of these properties, you're looking at it like Find Nemo Submarine Voyage, right? Find Nemo Submarine Voyage only does like less than 1,000 an hour. It doesn't have the longest queue, but for the queue that it has, it's a long time in that queue because it's so slow loading, right? And it takes up a massive amount of maintenance budget to keep that going. And it's like, ooh, that takes up quite a bit of land. It's not like the best, we can utilize that portion maybe a little bit better. That's something where, okay, now maybe we do something with that. Whereas Grizzly River Run, while it is big, it's smaller than you would think. And it provides a water ride, which California Adventure needs, at least in the summer months. So it's like, okay, it does something at least. It's like right on the edge, right? It's right there.
That's going to be the thing. How do you hide Pandora? That's going to be the big thing. How do you hide it from Tomorrowland?
So,
or from, I mean, the Matterhorn does cause that enough from that angle if you were going to go based off of, being around that side. But Tomorrowland, it's kind of flat. You're going to see it.
You're going to see it. My thing, and with the sightlines thing, and I've been all into the sightlines lately. It's funny. We had multiple videos on the Comcast building and Super Nintendo World, the whole thing. But for everyone has a different kind of like line, right? When it comes to sightlines. For me personally, seeing rock work and waterfalls and typically like kind of natural elements from another land, it doesn't bother me. Like when I see the very tip of like Big Thunder in Galaxy's Edge, that doesn't take me out of the experience for Galaxy's Edge, because in the Star Wars universe they have mountains and rocks, so it still fits in. With Tomorrowland, if I were to see a waterfall or some rocks, to me that doesn't take me out of Tomorrowland, because it's just a natural setting that's kind of looming over. And the awesome thing about Avatar, though, and this is one of the real reasons why I'm super bullish on it going in that spot, the submarine, Autopia, motorboat area, is that Avatar straddles both the Tomorrowland side, because it is about tomorrow. It is in the future. So even if you could see it, it's not technically breaking Tomorrowland's theme because it's still the future. And it also plays to the Fantasyland side because it's very much a fantasy film. And that's why I think it really works perfect there.
But also at the same time, if you look at it the other way around, where it wouldn't necessarily ruin Tomorrowland, but could it potentially lose the sites in Pandora? For instance, when you go into Pandora at Animal Kingdom, you see nothing else. You are enscoped within as if you were on the world of Pandora. You don't see nothing beyond of what's in Pandora. Whether you are crossing that bridge over into Pandora, it segues you into that land. And no matter which direction you are looking at, you see no other aspect of Animal Kingdom. That, again, now I'm not saying Disney can't do it, because then I would be going against everything that I feel that Disney can do, because to me, they could do anything. But I feel that Disney would have to do some sort of maneuvering with the placement itself. So I still think, again, it would be used with the motorboat, the Autopia, and the submarine voyage. But I think rather than have the land... I'm going to try to see how I can explain this. Rather have the land be fully connected into Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, but kind of have it turned the other way. So as you enter through Pandora, you're cut off from the other lands. You can't see them unless you circle back around.
So if you see what they did with Galaxy's Edge, for example, the attractions rim the edge of the park.
Correct.
That way it's, you don't get that much bleed over from those attractions from other portions. Also, too, you get a more immersive setting because they are so nestled and back in there. I would expect a similar layout for this. Now, I can't guarantee you won't be able to see the Matterhorn. Okay, that's a pretty big structure.
Yeah,
but
it's rock work. It's like, I mean, it's not, it's
a
not
naturalistic
like
thing.
Right. And that's kind of, and everyone's different. Like some people that might really bother them, and that's totally fair. But for me, if I see another mountain or rocks or something, there's really no theme that you can possibly come up with that rocks aren't going to exist in,
right.
So.
Yeah. And as long as you don't see like the Tomorrowland buildings, for example, or Small World or whatever, I think you're going to be okay. I mean, I remember going into the second level of Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, for example, seeing Big Thunder there, and it's like, okay, you can see that. But what really kind of takes you out of it a little bit is the what is it, the circus top of
Fantasyland Theater.
Like that gets you, right? Because it's like, okay, well, that's totally out of line for Star Wars. Which tells you maybe that doesn't have long, but it's a whole other story. You know, with anything that you do in Disneyland, because you're limited on space, you have to kind of position things differently. You might have to go with another type berm type thing,
right? Similar
to what they did with Galaxy's Edge, but not fully. The train can't S-curve like it does with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, only because the roundhouse is right above it. So you still have to have access there. But there's options. Go ahead.
And who's even really to say if Disneyland is going to get that version that Walt Disney World did? You know, Disneyland may not even get the floating mountains. You may get more of a
aquatic
eye level landscape, like of how it is with the Way of Water, because that would be perfect for the lagoon. The lagoon would be perfect because you have the water setting right there. So if you were to have an eye level landscape of Pandora, I think actually that would be better in the sense, because with the floating mountains, where does your eyes go? They go up. So if you go up to look at the floating mountains, then that's where your eyes may retract to say, oh, I'm now looking at the Matterhorn, or I may be looking. So there's a possibility that may be the notion. Or
it could be fully enclosed inside of an active volcano.
Oh,
these things are possible.
That's awesome.
Well, they did have that the Space Mountain at Disneyland Paris. they were going to have like a mini land inside of Tomorrowland, which featured all this kind of stuff enclosed. It's cool, but go ahead, OG.
Well, and one other reason why I'm really bullish on this particular area is because of a tweet from an Imagineer, Scott Trowbridge, less than a year ago. And he tweeted this. This is Imagineer Scott Trowbridge. He was the lead Imagineer on Galaxy's Edge. This is from July of 2022. So not that long ago. We're not even talking a year ago. He goes, at work, hashtag Imagineering, hashtag Disneyland never done. And what is it? It's the exact area we're talking about. Now, we were speculating back then that it was going to be Frozen. And you know what? Back then, it might have been. We had a whole we had a whole different CEO back then and Bob Chapek. And things have changed. The math has changed. Avatar has made, Way of Water has made over $2 billion.
Yep.
Avatar has solidified itself now as a honest for goodness franchise. Look, people can write off the first movie as a fluke. Fine. You don't fluke twice, okay? Both of these movies made $2 billion plus. So I think when Iger got in there, and Dre, you were very, very correct in saying this. Bob Iger's trying to justify that $70 billion Fox purchase. He's going to utilize the Fox stuff to justify that any way he can. He probably looked at the plans. He probably saw Frozen going there. He's like, well, what if we did Avatar? What if we did Avatar? This guy, Scott, he was already working on something in this area. And, so I think they've been kicking the tires for this area for a long time. Now, I will say this too. A lot of fans are saying, well, there's monorail stuff going through here. You know what? Look, there was a river going through Galaxy's Edge too. And they managed to alter that. So I don't think that really matters. And Dre, from what I understand, you tweeted today that they've been kind of eyeballing that monorail beam for a while, wanting to get rid of that or shorten it.
Yes. It's interesting. This is the plan for the Eastern Gateway. And you can see here that even a few years ago, they were willing to move the monorail beam up a couple hundred feet as it relates to the area above Hollywoodland specifically, just to kind of be able to expand the borders of DCA. That's all it was going to be done for. And yet they were willing to do it in that instance. And if they alter the route for this area above Tomorrowland, they would be gaining acres, not just a couple of parcels. Moreover, though, Code 101,
friend of the channel, by the way,
friend of the channel. Funny you should say that. It has been a desire to remove the inner loop over Autopia for the monorail beam. It would open up more acreage without having to worry about the beam being in the way and making the travel time shorter for the monorails. That idea of adjusting the monorail as it exists above the area north of Tomorrowland has been in the works like the spaghetti bowl. Been in works for a long time. Long time. The Imagineers have always wanted to do something about that because travel time is one big part of it. But you have to understand, remember, that leg of the monorail was done when the monorail didn't go anywhere. It was just an attraction. So they wanted to kind of give you a scenic tour, let's say, and really show you the capabilities of the monorail itself. Well, now things have changed. That is no longer an attraction. It's really a form of transportation. So cut that down. Now people wait less for every single station. The monorails are much more efficient. Well, that opens you up for all kinds of expansion. And like I said, they were willing to move the monorail beam even just a couple hundred feet to gain some room. Now you're talking about 8 acres, or 6 acres. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. And that's why I feel like all signs point to that. And we could be wrong. And it could be a totally different thing in a totally different area that we can't really come up with right now. Who knows? But
now can I ask this mapping right here, when it said like for possible Marvel land area, was that before the placement of where Avengers Campus is now? So this
Marvel was going to go there.
Okay, so that's where. Okay, I didn't know if they were still considering like if that was going to be expansion. Yeah, like is that still going to be for Marvel?
That is all intents and purposes. Yeah,
I thought that was going to be like that from the beginning.
Exactly. Avengers Campus is just kind of getting your foot in the door, right?
But also too, going back to Scott Trowbridge's little tweet there that again, wording matters, and hashtag
Sure.
Disneyland never done, not hashtag Disneyland Resort never done.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we could talk about D23 editors and fan sites, but I mean, look, this is from a lead Imagineer. I mean, he's telegraphing to the world on Twitter, hey, I'm working on something in this area.
And if we actually remember, too, going back to the Imagineering story, there was also another Imagineer that actually worked on Pandora at Walt Disney World that was moving some things around in Tomorrowland. And, there's also those rumors that is that particular Imagineer coming back on board.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, George. You're the king of the segue, my friend. That brings us to our next topic, which is Imagineering. Bruce Vaughn has returned. And this is Dre and I did a video on this the other day. But I'm glad that we have Candid and George here to chime in, and we can kind of talk about this because this is big news. Bruce Vaughn returns to Disney as co-lead of Imagineering Division. The executive is back as chief creative officer alongside Barbara Boza, president of Disney Imagineering. This brings some seniority kind of back to Imagineering. Imagineering has sort of been kind of green. I mean, a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot of new, younger people in Imagineering right now. I think there was definitely, and Dre, again, to your credit, you brought this up many times about institutional memory, what have you. We kind of needed this. We needed this kind of like this veteran to come in there, and kind of steer the ship a little bit. But George, I'll start with you because you didn't do that video with us. What do you feel about this? What are your thoughts?
The second actually I heard that Bruce Vaughn was coming back on board with WDI, I took a big sigh of relief because I know the projects that he was part of, during the era where WDI was on such a high, and knowing what he brings to the company. And I feel like that the company is going back to a direction to say, okay, we're not going to be playing around anymore. I feel that this is going beyond to just Josh D'Amaro saying, oh, we got a boundless future ahead of us and what have you, which is fine, which is great. But it's like, put your money where your mouth is. I don't want to hear it all the time. I want to see it. Right. This is Disney making moves. And I feel like this came off of what D'Amaro was saying when he was done visiting Walt Disney World, when he experienced Tron, when he said that, Tron was the tip of the iceberg, sort of speak. And a lot of people didn't really know what to go with that because, again, D'Amaro is one that doesn't elaborate much. He basically just kind of says his statement and that's it. And then lo and behold, we hear about Bruce Vaughn coming back, and now it's starting to feel like that those words may have more meaning than it just being word vomit.
Well, and this is interesting too, because what it does is, we've lost a lot of Imagineers over the past few years. A lot of them have retired, like Joe Rohde, what have you. A veteran coming back is sort of like, it's kind of sending a signal in a lot of ways to these old school Imagineers that did retire. Hey, you know what? It's safe to come back in, guys, right? I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Joe Rohde or maybe other Imagineers that left years ago come back into the fold because of Vaughn,
If we see Bruce Vaughn return and Joe Rohde return and Kevin Rafferty, it's like Imagineering assemble, because it's like those are the seasoned Imagineers that, did pinnacle projects for the company that are so beloved and so popular, such as with Cars Land, with Toy Story Mania, with Pandora. So there's a lot of history tied to their names than just being an Imagineer. And I feel like when D'Amaro said that Tron was the tip of the iceberg as far as the attractions, I feel like Bruce Vaughn is the tip of the iceberg as far as where Imagineering is starting to go back to its roots.
What are your thoughts? Oh, go ahead, Dre. I'm sorry.
Nobody can touch us.
That's what he said. That's what he said. Nobody can touch us. Go ahead, Candid.
So, bringing him back, what's your thoughts now of the backside of this? Like, we needed Bruce Vaughn back. He's the person that helped Tokyo Disney, the person that did Hong Kong. Um, those are big like adventures that he went on and did. Like Tokyo Disney's that's the all-time Disney. You know, if you can ever go to Disneyland or Tokyo Disneyland, I think everybody would just that's what we want. You know, that's what we want. So who knows for the future of this? Did they bring him back to help open up that third gate? I'm just throwing it out there.
Oh, that'd be great.
That's
That'd be
interesting.
great.
That's interesting.
Because why would he leave his other two CEO positions that he was in? You know, he had the Dreamscape thing going on, and he also
Right.
had the was it Airbnb or I think one of those. Those are pretty big things to leave.
Well, and Candid, you bring up a great point. And actually, I think Dre, and it's a meme, you know, on the phone with Dre, but I was on the phone with Dre, and and I think I mentioned this to you, Dre, where it's like for them to lure him away from like these pretty you know posh positions, you know, CEO and all this stuff, for them to lure him away, they must have promised him the world on the platter. Yeah. Like Bob Iger must have said, if you come back, it's free reign, buddy. Like, you know, we're not gonna. Right, exactly. We're not going to give you any pushback. You know, we want you to come in and fix things. So we're going to give you the
we'll give you the money that we cut the 7,000 other cast members. We'll hand it off to you. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Well,
go ahead, Ray.
And that's the thing. You kind of have to wonder like why, right? And you know why even pay out to get Bruce Vaughn back? You know, like what? Because they would have to. OG, I agree with you. They would have to entice him to come back. Right. This is not something where it's like an open position. You put it out there and somebody responds. Right. No, this is something where you go out and get people like Bruce Vaughn. So why make the effort? And I think a couple of things are kind of coming into.
Look what's being produced at WDI right now without
exactly. Right. So that's the one thing, right? You're looking at what are the past projects, and it's like Harmonious, Enchantment. You have Tron that kind of underwhelmed a little bit. I mean, like, look, it's gonna be like, you know, fantastic for Magic Kingdom. I'm not saying that, but some people are already coming out and being like, it's okay. And it's like, well, that's kind of surprising because we spent like 7 years on the damn thing. We're hearing Splash Mountain, right? We're hearing, well, The Wish. A lot of people don't, you know, talk about this part of the company as it relates to WDI, but The Wish was one of their projects, right? And we've seen the kind of feedback on that. And I was just watching The Wish, what is it, documentary, right? Done by National Geographic. And you hear the gal and she's like, I've never been on a cruise when I was asked to do this project. It's like, I'm sorry, what? And now we know why maybe some things didn't necessarily weren't well received by the seafaring community, let's say. And it's like, okay, these are all problems, right? The problems that Disney's going to have to fix. Well, then you have Universal on the other end, and they're ramping up. They're announcing this park, they're building this park, they're doing this, they're doing that. Well, obviously, there might be a point at which you have to, you know, kind of get your creative output up, right? You might have to really kind of start investing into the parks. I mean, Avatar is going to be one of them, but we might have to start expanding worldwide. Who do you really want to, you know, lead that charge if you have to? Necessarily want to trust Barbara Boza, who, you know, or do you want to go to a seasoned veteran who has done response packages before?
Right.
That's Bruce Vaughn.
Right.
And here's the other thing too. And I think, you know, WDW Pro made this point. I think it's apt. Bob Iger has talked a lot about accountability. Hey, when we do something, you're going to be held accountable. And we, you know, we relate that to the studio side of things, right?
Right.
Where you have some big hit, you know, big investments and they're big flops and so forth. Accountability has to come, you know, the hammer has to come down on somebody for those things. Who pays for a $200 million Harmonious that doesn't do anything? That is, you know, you only get 1 year out of it. Who pays for that? Who pays for a Wish that has to now be redesigned in some ways and in some areas in order to improve guest satisfaction scores with that ship that's going to be part of the fleet for 20 plus years? You know, who pays for that? Josh Giamaro now, everybody's looking around going, well, we can't blame Bob Chapek, so we're going to be looking at you. So he, just for himself, probably wants a veteran just to say, hey, need somebody who's done this before kind of thing. That's
Right.
Bruce Vaughn. So I think all of these things are coming together.
Yeah, Daddy Josh is definitely panicking. Okay, the accountability thing is definitely on his mind, and he's like, okay, well, the new team isn't going to cut it in this new world of accountability. Not diminishing these Imagineers. They have done some really great stuff. I fell in love with Runaway Railway at Disneyland. There is some good stuff here, but they are greener than the Imagineering of the past. I mean, they are younger. Much younger.
We've
and
seen
so I
chaotic
think
stuff too. We've seen chaos.
Right. So a Daddy Josh whose job is on the line, this accountability push, he's going to want to bring in someone like Vaughn or even a roadie, hopefully, to kind of like, okay, a little stability here. Yeah. So I think that's definitely a thing. Now it is kind of interesting too with Universal. You're absolutely right about this. They are ramping up they're ramping up to the point where it's almost like, wow, it's a huge investments all around. But then on the executive side, they're giving away retirement packages, which is kind of weird, right? Like physically they're ramping up, but then like all their veterans are leaving. They're kind of doing the opposite of what Disney is doing, which is interesting. I'm bringing that up as a comparison, how it's kind of like, right? Sure. I don't know. I find that very interesting.
It's crazy. We have heard maybe something being done in the Philippines. We've seen something being done in potentially Europe. We've seen talk of, they announced a thing in Vegas, thing in Frisco, Texas, Epic Universe's $4+ billion, right? We're seeing a lot of investment here, across the board. And Brian Roberts has been bullish about, hey, we like the theme park business. We think we can do very well in the theme park business. And at some point, I'm not saying now, I'm not even saying necessarily when Epic Universe opens, but at some point, you might have to respond with something just to kind of bring people back into the fold, right? So Bruce Vaughn, I think he does. He adds that kind of stability. He's that kind of adult back in the room going, okay, here's how we expand our operations. Here's how we get people back on board. Here's how we run a project. Here's how we keep it under budget. Here's how we ramp up efficiently and keep these things under control. Unfortunately, Boza, from what I understand, hasn't been able to do all that well.
Do you fellas feel like possibly that this is Iger's strategy as an intimidation towards tomorrow to bring Vaughn back on to say, hey, you don't hype it up that this could potentially be the person to replace you?
Well, I don't know if they're looking at like Vaughn as a replacement of Daddy Josh, but in terms of like intimidating Daddy Josh to get him to perform, yes, and not necessarily even just Daddy Josh. I mean, Bob Iger has said accountability is a big focus for us now. So yes. I think that, so I don't think that he's necessarily threatening Daddy Josh directly, but it's an indirect thing. I mean, and Daddy Josh is kind of like part of that equation now. When Bob Iger says at this earnings call, I'm holding I'm holding my executive team accountable more now than ever. Yes. Well, Daddy Josh is part of that equation.
Absolutely.
And Daddy Josh, this is the thing with him too, is that we have been very critical on this channel about him. Look, he seems like a really nice guy. That's never been the issue. The issue with him is that he seems like he's all style and no substance.
Get out of the tanning bed and back into the conference room.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I feel like, yes, he's in the parks all the time. Yes, he's taking selfies with fans. He's smoozing. But can anybody watching this video give us any comment down below? Anything substantial that Josh has given us as fans since he's been there running the parks?
I'm still waiting for it.
Anything?
Well, to be fair, he did announce Lake Nona. So there you go.
Exactly. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. That went over well.
Yeah, that was a significant change to the operation there. There's I should have brought it up, but there's just like a shot, like this professional shot with a big old zoom lens on Daddy Josh. He's taking a selfie with somebody, and it's like, that's Josh D'Amaro. That's all he's known for now, is just taking pictures with the fans. He hasn't done anything.
But to be fair, fellas, he did mention Moana and Zootopia at Animal Kingdom. He did mention Villains and Kanto and Coco at Magic Kingdom oh, wait a minute. Sorry, that's a what if.
Wouldn't it be great if we
maybe.
could do those things? That's how he mentioned.
Speaking of
those
that Moana thing in Epcot, I haven't gotten to see too much concept art of that. I know, kind of going off topic here, but I feel like that's kind of one of those bad ideas that when I did first hear about, I'm like, why? Like, why are we doing that? Why are we putting it in that location?
Well, and that's also too. I'm actually kind of glad you brought that up because that still kind of ties into what we were talking about Avatar. A lot of people were thinking that was going to be the way of what Avatar was going to be. It was going to be like this walk-through interaction with the water and what have you. And again, still, that is nothing compared to what's at Animal Kingdom.
No.
And Iger keeps on reiterating that. He takes it back to Animal Kingdom.
Yeah. And the water thing, yeah. I heard that rumor as well. It's like, oh, it's going to be like, Journey of Water at Epcot. Wow. No, it's not. Yeah, I can just tell you right now, he's not telling it to Morgan Stanley. Okay, I can just tell you that right now.
Exactly. And does that add capacity? Come on. In any real way, does that add any capacity? Please.
Yeah, it provides something that kids can do in a park that needs it, right? That's like their Redwood Creek Challenge Trail in a way, right? And I think that was always intended.
We're talking about Disneyland, though. What does that have to do with kids?
Yeah, well, come on. I mean, it's a kids park here. Let's go. But no, I mean, Journey of Water, right? I think that was like the concept of playing with water was always intended as kind of a harkening back to the Imagination Pavilion, right? Where kids used to play there. I think they always wanted to go with something like that, something a little bit more naturalistic, something that featured a little bit more foliage.
And then throw in the IP. And then
the IP got slapped on it, and there you go. That's how that whole happened. Yeah. Exactly. Get rid of the turf. Yeah. Break up that area, the monotony and so forth. So that's, I think, how that's going. But look, I mean, that's, I think that's what we have to look forward to in 2023. Like, we're not looking at, big, huge things. Josh has to make his mark as well. Yeah. And I think if he goes and ramps up, maybe with his young team, and they go over budget, or they have like a Disneyland Paris type incident, he's gone. I think he knows that.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I was going to say. If he does go, could Bruce Vaughn potentially become the next Parks Resorts if Tomorrow fails?
I think things have to be done before 2028, before the Olympics. If things get done before the Olympics and it actually shows that people are staying at the resort and coming in and they're spending money, I think if Vaughn was in charge of that, I can see him taking over. If he actually proved a point and made money. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. If you can make something, like I said, with capacity, getting people in, and I don't know, I think the Olympics, I know we kind of talked about it on Twitter, how much people is it really going to bring in? Because I think that's why they want to bring it back to what we talked about before, spending that money in California instead of over in Walt Disney World. Get it in here before 2028 for Olympics. Yes. But realistically, is it going to bring that much people in?
By itself to Disneyland, not really. Just like I mean, I guess Do Trust Me Bro was saying, like, when the Olympics came here back in the 1980s.
Real quick, before you go on, Candid, just so you know, Do Trust Me Bro is our source, but we can't name this person, so we call him Do Trust Me Bro. Gotcha. Just so you're aware. Go ahead, Trey.
Do Trust Me Bro was saying, when the Olympics were there at Disneyland back in the 1980s, the parks were empty for the time the Olympics were actually in town.
Wow.
Where I think if you have a big expansion that can kind of pull people to the Disneyland Resort from LA, now you're talking. Now you have all that international visitation potentially that they can actually capitalize on. And I think that's what Universal's kind of thinking about. I think Disneyland's thinking the same thing. Go ahead, Ken.
You need hotels now then at that point again.
Exactly. And I think I think a new hotel, it's got to be part of the plans. I mean,
it's got to be.
I've had conversation with Do Trust Me Bro, who was like, I mean, we were supposed to get a resort hotel for the opening of Cars Land. never came. And it's like, well, now we're several expansions removed even from that. So we
Right.
Disneyland Resort needs a hotel. I've been screaming about it on the past couple of shows. We need hotel capacity. I think it's coming. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, this is interesting. A very interesting conversation. Candid, it was fantastic having you on the show today. Loved having you on, and you are always welcome back on. We'll definitely have you back on.
Appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. Yes. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, Candid.
Yeah, find me at Twitter. That's where I usually stomp around on, and that's at the Candy Camper. Also, YouTube. I'm gonna probably get some more videos up there soon. And I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Actually, send me your YouTube channel in the DMs, Candid, and I'll link it in this video so people can check it out and subscribe.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very much.
That's our favorite Larson drop, which is actually pretty relevant right now. She's back in the news.
She's back in the news for what is it? Having a disagreement with another on-screen actor or whatever, compatriot, fellow Avenger. Who knew? I couldn't have possibly predicted that.
No,
very funny.
It's so out of character. But producer Dre, if you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Well, the best place to find me is going to be on Twitter at VashGuy. It's right down there. Just go ahead and type that in for, as Christine Sons McCarthy would say, for all the
Robust
discussion right there. And if you want to go ahead and see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55, where we have some amazing shows, not only that we've just recorded, posted, but also that are in the works. So you want to go ahead, you want to hit subscribe. I'm telling you, folks, we've got some big stuff coming in. Stuff that'll take our channel to probably another level, I think. Talking about stuff that people just don't talk about. So I think it's going to be very interesting.
Fly me to the moon.
There we go.
That's right.
Right.
And you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment down below what you think about all of our conversations. And if you want to go ahead and see me, go ahead and hit the subscribe button where you can see my show, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. I want to go ahead and say, Candid, the hotel comment, that was a very astute observation, with the Olympics coming in. That's very good. I didn't quite think about that before, but I'm like, man, he is spot on. So I do appreciate you coming on the show and adding that good those robust discussions there. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Perfect. And down below, we got the Family Man 23, sponsored by Manscaped. Thank you, man. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
Yes. We got Mr. Ball to the Wall, the Family Man 23. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media. And by the way, he is not sponsored by Manscaped. I don't want Manscaped to sue us.
Yes, but in time, I would like to. So Manscaped, if anyone is watching that's part of Manscaped, definitely reach out because I would like
It's
to.
the perfect tie-in. Come on.
Yes. But until that happens, you could check me out on my other YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You could find me also as part of the podcast, A Walk with Walt. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. And of course, you can find me here on my home base channel with Orange Grove 55, with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Perfect. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we talked about. We were talking all kinds of expansion at Disneyland, Pandora. Is it going in Disneyland? Or maybe you agree with Dave from Fresh Baked. Maybe it's going into DCA. Also, I do want to say one more time, I want to reiterate, we love Dave. We love Fresh Baked. We're all big fans here. At the end of the day, we're all just nerds trying to figure this thing out. But just want to thank him for his content and a great guy overall.
We're not like the
very
rest.
cool.
We're not like the rest of Diz Twitter folks. We're very kind and friendly people here
Yes.
on Orange Grove 55.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So anyway, big shout out to Dave for that great content. It was fun breaking it down. But comment down below with all your thoughts. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful day.